Welcome to the quiet little corner of YouTube known as Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian and I honor your presence here today, as well as honoring the presence of a wonderful man. Geez, I don't know, I guess it's been about 4 years that I first became acquainted with our guest today, and his name is Reverend Dale Allen Hoffman, and he is coming to us live and unscripted from Asheville, North Carolina. Dale, thank you for being here today and welcome.
Absolutely. And you're in what, Thailand? Is that where you
I'm
are
in
right
Northwest Thailand. I'm between Burma and Chiang Mai, more or less.
now? Ooh, cool. Fun places to explore.
Absolutely. I've been here for a few years. I've lost track of it, and I guess that's yeah.
I think the last time we were talking, you were in Hawaii, weren't you?
When you and I first got acquainted, I was living in the steam room of the world, Haiku Valley on Maui, where it only rains twice a year for the first half and then the second half.
Nice.
A place where mold literally grows inside of your body. Literally.
Wow, you see, you don't hear that in the tourist brochures.
No, you never
So.
will. But Haiku Valley of Maui, if you want to go get mold growing inside your body from how humid and damp it is, that's where you want to go. And now here I am back in Thailand. I had been in Thailand before and then Hawaii for a while, and now I'm back in Thailand, sort of doing a little hopscotch between the two. I first got acquainted with you. Can I just call you Dale?
Sure.
I don't. Okay.
What else are you going to call me?
Well, I'm not going to say Reverend and all. We're not.
No, I don't even. I resisted even putting that on. And then one day I was looking at it and I saw the word reverence in Reverend. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll use it. Yeah. After years of actually being ordained, I finally did it. So use the word.
It's whatever, wherever you're flowing. But I first got acquainted with you, Dale, through your work with the Aramaic Lord's Prayer, particularly your adaptation of it in the sense of toning, which I would venture to say you're probably most popularly known for, but that's certainly not all that you bring to the table and that you offer. And if one were to go to your website, which is Dale Allen with an E, Hoffman, 2 F's, MAN.com, DaleAllenHoffman.com. I'll put the link down there at the description. They would find that, I'm just going to read it. Ancient Aramaic wisdom keeper, very appealing. Navigating the cosmic shift, which is what I would love to talk with you about today. Ancient insight for the present moment, and so many, many more topics, another 10 or 12 topics more, all of them directly spiritually relevant and quite practical for one's own sadhana, for your own custom-made approach to spirituality, aka your own version of a religion, whatever. And by religion, I just mean your own spiritual practice, how you interact with the spirit realm. But Dale, in regards to navigating the cosmic shift, I recently spoke with Kiara Windrider, and it's come up in conversations with some of my other wonderful guests that I'm so blessed to have here on this platform. I mean, there's a lot of the new agey rumor, like, oh, did you feel that? There's a huge shift. But then all of that aside, it's obvious that rumors and buzz and, sensationalism aside, things are changing. There is most definitely a shift. I personally can remember just last year at exactly this time, late September, I got a hit, as they say, a download, as my brother Bob would say. It was just, and it was, you need to get very seriously and consistently into your personal spiritual purification and preparation for something massive that is on its way, which you will know later what it is, but you start getting seriously ready now. And keep your nose to the grindstone. Don't get distracted by rumors and it's this and it's that. And, you know, as the Bible verses would say, the kingdom of heaven is nigh. It's over there. It's over here. No,
Yeah.
You just focus within. And what I took it as is, wow, something actually is on a massive collective global scale now underway. It is already grinding. It's, you know, it's already churning. You better tend your garden to be able to meet it. And I didn't get a sense of, and it's so amazing. And I also didn't get a sense of, oh my God, it's the end. It's horrible. I didn't get a sense of whether it was good or bad per se, but that it's activated, it's underway. Be sure you are ready to receive it when it unfolds. What do you say to that, Dale?
Well, the good or bad part is completely a choice or a decision. Let me clarify between the two. The choice is something we do consciously. A decision, to desize, you know, coming from the Latin, means to tear or rip something. Intriguingly, rip something, tear it apart, and then sort of deduce, do we want this side or that side? Whereas even using the word choice rather than decision is powerful enough. But I can put two people in the, like, good way to put this. You know, let's take two people, one who is a, you know, 84-year-old bluegrass and country music fan, and one who is like a 27-year-old thrash fan, and let's send them both to a Megadeth show. And one's going to probably, unless that one bluegrass fan is incredibly open and is not making choices that literally put a stone over the mouth of God, I often say, they could have a pretty amazing experience even at a Metallica or a Megadeth show. You know, maybe some earplugs would help, but they're probably not going to have the same experience. And the difference is, well, it's not even really the difference between the two of them, but what I've spent my life doing my best with is getting to the place where I realize that whatever it is I'm perceiving it can't be good or bad. It's all complete. That's all something that's a judgment coming from within me. And as soon as I choose it and or see it as good or bad, it's going to reflect that back. And even if I really deep within myself feel not good about something and I'm not acknowledging that, yet I'm putting all this stuff out, oh, you know, let's smile in the midst of all this chaos. What I'm really feeling is what I'm going to see, not what I'm thinking. There's been such a weird focus on thought in the last 100 years, but thought is actually, in most of the ancient teachings, an effect of feeling. Feeling, not to be confused with emotion, which is something else entirely.
Right.
Feeling is the sensation of pure frequency. It's walking into a room, I say with the cosmic question mark over your head, just being curious, to be open. And you're not seeking to get to a point where you're thinking good, bad, I like it, I don't like it, it smells good, it smells bad, whatever that is, but actually being in that moment, being that observer and being awake and aware without allowing it to, you know, I always have all my stuff around me, you know, kind of crystallizing it down into basically a concept that I now have that thought-based relationship with the concept rather than having that pure sine wave relationship with the experience itself. And that's something that when I first started realizing that, it wasn't an easy transition to move into in my life. My life actually looked like it fell apart for quite a while. So
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that probably at this moment. You know, I mean, there's a lot of, I know very few people, and I would have to think very hard of one who has absolutely got it all together. Everything is just running smoothly and as planned. I don't even think I could name more than one or two people. Dale, it's interesting. I don't think it posted yet because I usually make my episodes weeks and weeks before they actually post. But I know that I made one that I want to reference. I don't know how it'll fall into when this one posts, but The whole point of the episode is that we can only share an event. We cannot share an experience. And you just illustrated that with, your depiction of the two different people going to a concert. And I can vouch for it. It's absolutely true. I'm not into sports and all that, but I went with a good buddy of mine years ago to go see a hockey game. Oh, I had an absolute blast. I never thought I was gonna, I'm not even gonna see the puck. I had a blast. I loved it. Wandered into a reggae concert in Costa Rica with Anthony B going on in 1 hour. Didn't even know who he was. I happened to love reggae, but I just went there on a whim. Turns out he was having an outdoor concert, got me a ticket, got the last spot next to the fence where the field was, went in, had a ball. So that point you made about, walk in with the question mark on your head, the unknowing. And I would polish that even and say, without the need of knowing, you drop the whole need to know, enter into flow state, and even don't even overthink that. Just be in
I actually
flow.
don't even take it to the point of even wanting to know. I don't even want to know in that sense.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine in unknowing. You're talking to a man who came from the other side of that spectrum. I mean, I've got a long way to go. I'm not trying to claim any, great mountains climbed here, but compared to where I started off on that very issue of, well, I need to know, I must know, I will know, and it's like beating yourself against a stone cliff, and you're not getting the answers out of the stone cliff. You're just beating yourself to oblivion. And it goes, some of what you said rings to me of there's some Buddhism in there, there's a little bit of Hinduism, and even some Taoism at this point. Not that they own these truths, but they are commonly available there. A purer form of Buddhism would advise or instruct to take rest in unknowing. Just drop the whole matrix of I need to know, I want to know, I gotta know. Drop it all. Float in unknowing. And that brings us back to purer spirit, doesn't it?
Well, if I didn't, I just had this conversation basically very similar to a friend of mine, a guy named Kirby Delanaral. He's actually over in Sri Lanka. He just got back home this morning after this, almost 3-week journey in the US. But, having this conversation of, he was like, you've been around Buddhism. And I'm like, well, when I was in my early 20s, I actually kind of laid the Bible down for a little while for the most part. And I ventured what I thought was sideways into Buddhism and Taoism, a little bit into Hinduism, the Upanishads, etc. But it was really Buddhism and Taoism. And and there was also where I was kind of studying things like A Course in Miracles. And I felt like I had to do that in order to actually see what it was I was even working with biblical natured things. But it really was allowing me to sort of take the Etch-a-Sketch, if anybody knows what that is, and just kind of shake it and take my hands off the controls and allow myself to be in this state of observation. If there was nothing or there was something, that I was able to, as best as I could, let go of any kind of desires to make a difference between nothing and something, as an example. And it got me to this point where the way I often talk about is someone's, calibrating a chronometer, like an old timey watch. They have different methods they do it, but you've got to loosen all those mechanisms down, and a lot use magnets to kind of get them back into a calibrated state before they winch them back down. And that's kind of the way it was with me. But I always say, don't nail your furniture to the floor. I've never went back and winched my controls down, so to speak, the mechanisms. I've done what I can to be open. And it's like we said before, I was saying before you started recording, that if someone's going to ask me something, I'm not sitting there formulating a statement. I'm doing what I can to truly be listening and hearing. And when that moment comes that someone sort of bats it back to me, I'm open, I'm in the space, and whatever needs to happen happens. And a lot of people, younger me, would have been terrified by something like that. And it's like, when you realize the guidance system is not outside of you, there's an innate GPS that's within, and you don't necessarily have to need to know where it's taking you. If you're present right here where you are, wherever you go, there you are. John Kabat-Zinn, who
Yep.
quoted so many other great masters. But
Yep.
it altered my life in such a way that I started watching, actually, and nothing wrong with any of it. So many of my friends that just kept pursuing, financial security in their, prepping for retirement, making sure their 401ks were buffed, and buying properties and all that. And that's fine. That's fine. And it's like, people were looking sideways at me, and they would be like, well, what's he doing? He's not motivated by money. Like, what is this
He's got no
exactly? It looks like
drive.
he's out wandering just wandering out in the wilderness. And then all of a sudden, what's funny is just the last 5 years, people are coming up to me and they're like, I was a millionaire when I was 25. I've known you since we were 10. And they were like, I used to look, God, what the heck, what is he doing? But he's like, now I realize that you've got your hand on something. And I realized that I've got my hands full of so much, but I feel like I don't have anything in my hand. And I was like, well, the difference for me is that I'm not trying to get anything in my hand. I'm just allowing my hand to be what it is, without me needing to have any kind of concept of what that is, where it's taking me, what it means. And that doesn't mean I can't teach. It doesn't mean I don't read. It doesn't mean I don't study. But it's being in a place where I realize that I don't, that sounds new agey, but that deeper realization that I could spend an entire lifetime forming or making the perfect me, building the perfect you, kind of an 80s catchphrase, and then come to realize that everything I built was in the movie theater. And at some point, the film strip's going to run out, and I'm going to realize, oh, shit, it wasn't real. None of that was real. None of the pursuits, none of all that stuff, none of that was real. Because what I'm looking for is what is looking. And I had enough trauma in my life, not only that, and suffering, that it was either the nut house, excuse me for saying it that way, suicide, or just let go. And I let
And you know
go.
what? I honor that you so authentically and organically just come out with that, because there's a lot of people, hopefully a few of them are watching, that are experiencing that right now, that have not reached that realization or that willingness yet. And you talk about, in the end, the film strip's going to run out. I thought of the line from the Beatles, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. It's ironic how this world seems to be structured, or should I say, how we live and operate and function in this world is probably more accurate. Almost as if everything is upside down from how reality truly is. I mean, there's such an incredible battle for our consciousness and our wills, and perhaps our souls on some level as well. This incredible, incessant, relentless push to get more, have more, become more, do better, look better, have more than that one, be better, to get the newer. Now you have to have the iPhone 14, you have to have a Tesla, all this kind. And my gosh, all of it is just shadow theater. It's not even shadow theater, it's chaff, it's dust. And in the end, which is the beginning of the next, people who have pursued that alone are going to find themselves, as the Gospel of Thomas says, and you are that poverty. And that is
Absolutely.
what I would dread. I am not going down that road, so I don't think that would be a huge issue for me when I reach that point. But there are many who are. The materialism ideology, there is only this physical body and these physical things, and I need to have more and better constantly. It's just like tapping your soul, just draining your soul out little by little. But I love how you have worded living a connected, awakened, and soul priority existence, and be, I should say being, not existence. And in that context, Dale, tell us about navigating this. First of all, if you could let us know, what do you think, or what have you discerned the cosmic shift might be? And then how do we navigate it? Let's try it that way.
I don't know fully what it is. And anybody that says that they do is just hasn't lived long enough, or they're fooling themselves or misrepresenting.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
feel that the ones that got closest to it was not Christianity, although I think he tapped it. I think it was actually really coming primarily from the Indian region and the ideas of the Yuga, the Kali Yuga specifically. The larger processions, and I think the Egyptians tapped it. Obviously, the Mayan Yucatec cultures tapped it. Maybe where Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, maybe they tapped it. Maybe parts of Europe tapped it. I mean, there are these natural ebbs and flows to anything. And when you start looking at the bigness of everything, everything rotating, spinning around each other thing, whether you go down to the microscopic or the macroscopic, who is it that said it's impossible to discern which is the grander view? But it's funny that we go smaller and smaller, we find stuff in space, smaller. We've realized that the stuff was actually more smaller stuff in space. And then we go into that, and that stuff is actually more tinier stuff in space. And if we could just be awake and aware, it is obvious. I mean, 30 years ago, I was part of the new age. I'm around so many of the new age sort of teachers and speakers, some of those that I'm honored to have, they sort of took me under their wings, so to speak. But we all knew something was coming. There's all this, eventually this impending 2012 that just sort of went by on the calendar, and we went, okay. And it was interesting to watch people that built their lives on the whole 2012 thing. And then like after about 6 months after it kind of came and went, they were all of a sudden talking about, oh, well, the numbers were skewed. We weren't looking at the calendar right. And I'm like, you're still missing the point here. My point in all that is people would sort of laugh at me, not a lot, but I mean like friends, people in family would sort of giggle and like, yeah, Dale thinks there's this big thing coming and whatever it may be. But especially in the last 5 or 6 years, they're coming to me going, all right, something's happening. I can't deny this. My children know it. They feel it. And it's not just the news media and all of the climate stuff and all these other wonky things that are happening. They feel it. If they're not plugged into anything, they can feel it.
Yeah.
And almost like a gravitational force of sorts. There's so many things that NASA has said about it. Hawking said a lot about it. Carl Sagan said a lot about it and he was basically ignored about a lot of it. Of course, now people steal his stuff and claim it as their own and, whatever. But my point is that I don't know that we know exactly. They talk about going toward the galactic core and all this other stuff of the Milky Way, all these different concepts. But in the end, I've been doing my best to tell people what it really is maybe isn't what's important, but rather the navigation of that. It's like you don't necessarily have to know per se that you're going up a hill. You can feel it, and you can have your eyes closed and you're going to feel it when your car starts going, oh, and that those gravitational forces are kicking in. The second law of thermodynamics, entropy. I tell people all the time, look, if you're going 10 miles an hour, it's important to look around you on the road. Becomes more important at 25, becomes more important at 40. more important even still at 60, 70. But when you start getting around 70 in a car, all of a sudden, when's the last time you had an oil change? Is your car in alignment? All these things start coming into play just because that's how the laws work. That's how the system works. And then what starts becoming obvious is when we hit what a guy named Bill Harris, he had the Centerpoint Holosync Institute. He talked about that evolutionary moment of truth where the system builds up to a point of entropy, which is resistance in the system. And what's more important at that moment is how do we actually bring lubrication? Dr. Michael Rice says willingness is the cosmic grease. How do we bring an allowance into that allows that system to release whatever it is that's building up, bring that willingness, that sort of cosmic grease into the system so that it can now bump up into a higher level of functioning? And we don't think about that because when all that's happening and the car is out of alignment, and when I'm saying car, I don't mean the car, when the body temple is out of alignment, and all this stuff's going on, we feel like we're wearing our heart on our sleeve. When we make that choice of resisting that process or thinking that it's somehow bad, we recreate the very thing that we're trying to resist. How do I know that? Okay, don't think about Michael Jackson. Who are you not thinking about right now? In order not to think about something, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
But we start resisting that process. We create more entropy, and then ultimately the system breaks down and people do mass shootings and they kill children and then they do all these other things that are happening. And then so many of us that are not awake look at that and, oh no, that person now has to suffer. That person has to be beaten down. This doesn't remove accountability. But what I'm saying is when you realize that each of us are having, this is the beautiful quagmire, the enigma is we're each having an absolutely completely unique experience. And we seem to finally be waking up to the realization that whatever my experience is, even my perception of another person's experience are not the same thing. They never will be.
Nope.
And in
Because
order
we're
for a one to
subjective
birth
here.
itself out, every single thing it births has to be completely unique. Otherwise, the entire system would cease to exist in that sense. People don't think about that. No two things can be exactly the same. You know how I came upon this realization? For several years while I was doing all my Aramaic stuff on the side, I was a supervisor, machine instructor on these multi-million-dollar machines that made CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays. And if you look at a CD, they don't call it duplication, they call it replication. What's the difference? Duplication means that you have an item, you have an object, and then you're making something that's a lot like it. Replication is an idea that it's exactly the same. But the funny thing is, it's not possible that two things could be exactly the same. Nothing in existence. If I take a CD or a Blu-ray or a DVD and I zoom in on that with all the instrumentation we had, it just looks like a flat surface to us. When you actually look down on it, on the bottom of it, where the metallization layer is, there's things called pits and lands. They look like teeth, almost little grooves. And if you look at it at a certain level, it looks the same all the way around on every disc. When you start getting really close, all of a sudden you'll realize some will be very square, some will sort of be a little more concave because the mold was a little too hot, the mold was a little too cool. And when it gets far enough out of the specs that it needs to be just like all the others in order to be able to function, you can't see it anymore. It doesn't function anymore. Kind of like a hologram. You take a hologram and a true laser plate hologram. A dear friend of mine was a guy, his name was Michael Talbot. He wrote a book called The Holographic Universe. This was back in my late teens up in New York. He passed from leukemia like mid 90s, but he used to talk about how you take a true laser holographic plate, and if you look at it, you'll see a 3D image in its entirety. If you break it into two pieces, you'll see two 3D images in their entirety. Break it into 16, break it into 256, break it into 1024, however many you want to break it into, you're going to still, in each of those little slivers, when you project that laser in, see that full three-dimensional image up to a point when you can no longer see the image. That doesn't mean the image isn't there, just that it's been fragmented so much that it's almost imperceptible. And that's kind of what we've done to ourselves. We've shattered ourselves because what's happening is within, going back to the beginning, all of the movement, the precession of the equinoxes, the yugas, the idea of a great year, the idea of the end of time, all these different things, if we're not shown how to navigate that, how to be open in those processes, how to forgive, which is the primary, which in Aramaic doesn't mean pardon, that literally means to remove the root of my suffering. It means to take the concept off and start living back at the pure sine wave level. If we're not taught that, then as all these forces are happening, we start lashing out at each other. We start committing suicide. We start taking out with all these chemical addictions, whatever. But that's what happens until we open to the point where even if we don't know what the hell is going on, we sort of make the jokes, and it's true, I do too. Like the New Agers here in Asheville, everybody's like, "Ooh, did you feel that?" Yeah, I felt it. All these shifts. But when you start becoming aware like that, you're going, "Oh, wait a second. It doesn't matter what's moving. What matters is that I'm open and I'm allowing it to move, because whatever is moving is some kind of resistance in my system, which means, again, I've put a stone over the mouth of God. And I'm not open to the actual experience. I'm trying to figure out what my concept of it is."
Well, what you've shared here, Dale, kind of flows quite well with the hit that I told you I got a year ago about there is a huge shift. It is collective. It is worldwide. It is big. You're going to know what it is at some point. But all you need to know is that you need to get into alignment. Okay, first of all, purification was very important. You need to be in a state of perpetual purification, because then you're letting go of all the junk that would have otherwise drained and distracted you and limited you. And so basically, yeah, a big thing's coming. Here's what you need to do within that context. And that's the message I took. And I was okay with the unknowing. And I have come in the past couple of years in particular, I have become very averse and turned off to anything that is speculation, prediction, and prophecy. I don't want to hear it.
Oh, is there any of that out there? I didn't realize any of that was out in the world. I'm kidding.
If you dig hard enough, especially if you go on the internet, someone told me, at some point you can discover it if you look really hard.
Yeah, well, I if it's on the internet, then it has to be true.
Right. Absolutely.
So
if anything, even if I am temporarily snagged into the internet and allow some of my life force to go towards that before I snap back out of it, if I even see a headline that if it has a question mark in it, goodbye. And if it has a hypothetical word, may, might, could, goodbye. If something already happened, it may not even be true. And so I don't want to hear anything about speculative stuff, prophecy, predictions. Here's China's going to collapse in 3 days. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And so
isn't it amazing? People can go back to that over and over and still bite those hooks. The same people constantly. And the same people have been throwing these prophecies out for years that almost never Pat Robertson, bless his heart, he finally retired, but he was really good at that. But
Dale, it's not just that. Look at the media who we're gonna not get into this, but I just want to touch it and drop it. Okay, look at the media and what as a collective it has fed to the world for the past, I don't know, we'll just say almost 3 years. And then look how many people finally woke up to what has been going on for decades. But of course, we were all tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, nut jobs, but now almost everyone can see it. So, now it's valid. And then the next big thing, the next big story, it's just like wipe slate, and they swallow the entire hook, line, and sinker for the next big thing from the same sources that they just realized we're manipulating them for however long. And so, yeah, it's not just that, it's the media too. But I think it's very important, as I like to use the phrase, tend your own garden. And so I think that on the individual basis, when we are tending our own garden, then we are doing the best we can. As Ramana Maharshi and Ram Dass would say, Best thing you could do for me is work on you. Best thing I can do for you is work on me. I cite those quotes a lot. Tending your own garden is just about the best thing you could ever do for the world. You know, keep yourself in perpetual purification, ascension, and remembering, realization, and returning to self that you are. And anything that is not you is not yours and is a disservice to you. Release it, release yourself from it. One other point. I love how you noted the Aramaic meaning of forgive is not pardon. I always have a beef with the prayer of St. Francis having been translated with the word pardon, which is definitely wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's interesting, and you may appreciate this too, that the Hawaiian word for forgiveness means to free oneself, to free yourself, to free yourself from. And so, you know, in the Western mind, in the English language, we're sort of conditioned into the assumption that to forgive means other did harm to me. I let you off the hook for your trespass.
Ding, 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 ding.
Not what forgive means. Forgive means to release yourself from the grip of woundedness and victimhood and being hurt from, and let's be real, some things that people do did damage and hurt and wound us. That's a fact. But I heard a point in The Way of Mastery, channeling Yeshua, book 1, chapter 3 on forgiveness. And he said, forgiveness means to release the other from your projection upon them. In other words, in response to whatever they did that you judged. And I will say there's extremes that I don't think fit into these boxes, but in general, they're extremely liberating to absorb into our awareness.
You know, the literal translation of spook, which is the word forgive in Aramaic, means to cancel, to leave, to like drop something and walk away from it. And the amazing thing about that is, you know, here's something, and I'm going to again quote, you know, Dr. Michael Rice. He said, this is the self-test. This is how you know if it's yours or theirs. He was like, it's a big one. It's complex, but pay attention. Here it is. Here's the question. Who's feeling it?
There it is. I knew
and people go, whoa, wait. But they, and he was like, oh, you ever notice that it's always they or them? Think about that and realize that Michael created literally the biggest shift for me, you know, through a lot of his Aramaic forgiveness work of anybody. That changed my world entirely, to come into the realization of like Sri Aurobindo. He said that the ego, which only in Greek, ego literally just means individualized self. It's almost like a reflected self or a mirror self. Nothing bad about it, like all the modern psychology. That's all the stuff we project even onto that. But Aurobindo calls the ego a supra-rational enigma. And Michael really was the one that he went, wait a second. It's kind of like he put his arm around me and he went, did you realize you're in a movie theater right now? And of course I'm going, what are you talking about? Like, this is real. And then all of a sudden, like as an example, what Yogananda said, he said to transfer our sense of identity from the pseudo soul or ego back to the inherent nature of our divinity, and to be an ever joyous witness of a stupendous cosmic drama.
Yeah.
And then I went, hold on a second here. So I'm dreaming the movie. I'm all the characters. I'm not what's projecting on the screen. I'm not the film strip, which may be what I think. Mm-hmm. I'm really kind of the light in the projector, but actually there's no screen. There's no film strip. There's no projector. There's only whatever I call it, consciousness. I am. Balsikar, speaks of that, the I becoming the I am. When you start living on that kind of a level, you can still dance in the play. You can play with the characters. You can be as
in it, but not of it,
human as you want to be, and yet be awake in the process.
And it kind of smacks of what the Christ taught, who would save his life will lose it. Meaning, if you hang on to this illusion of self rather than release it and be the I am that I am, again, Gospel of Thomas. Oh, I just forgot. I just went blank.
Can you tell us how our end will come? Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning, for they will know the end and they will not taste death. Looking at that.
Yeah.
And we
You
have that realization of the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That word life in saves that those who find their life will lose it. Yeah. That word life actually isn't life in Aramaic, which would be chaya. It's actually closer to the word soul. And soul, of course, psyche from the Greek. That word in Aramaic is napsha. What napsha means, literal translation is breath of life.
Spirit.
Well, close. Yeah. Spirit, in Aramaic.
Used to mean breath.
Yeah. Spirit, funny enough, in Aramaic. I tell people all the time, and they're absolutely interconnected, and there's no dividing line between soul and spirit.
Yeah.
They're just us kind of compartmentalizing things. But what's interesting in Aramaic, the word ruach in Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic, that word spirit, what it actually means is frequency, which a little more accurately is breath, which is what spirit means. Spiritus in Latin means breath. People forgot that. It also means gravity. It means heartbeat. It means magnetism. All these different examples of things that expand and retract. Yeshua is basically saying exactly that. He's saying, look, once you think you've got that breath in your hand, it's like, trying to carry fire is a phrase I use a lot. Once you think you've got it all figured out, oh yeah, I've got it. I figured my life out. I've got it. I am enlightened.
You're off already.
That whole idea. And I had moments early on where I would have those, big awakenings that would last, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then sort of one day it was like I'd have to remember I had to, pay my car insurance or the rent or something like that. And maybe it pulled me back out. But those times got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I started realizing I was living in this here or now experience when the truth was here, either here and there, so to speak, or here and here. I started creating like almost a desire to get back to that awakened state, which was the very thing that turned it into yet another concept that I now had a relationship with that I would pursue, which took me out of the present moment, which made it impossible. And it's amazing how the brain, the ego, it just does all these amazing things to preserve
it loves the ego intellect. There's two things I find myself relating a lot. What I like to call the ego intellect, it loves to chase its own tail, loves it. And it needs a chew toy. If you think of the ego intellect as a naughty little puppy, it just loves to chase. It needs something to pursue. Something is lacking. Sick 'em. It loves it. It's what it does. And it needs a chew toy. Suppose it kind of catches it or it gets enough of it to now it needs to chew on it. And when you had moments of epiphany, moments of true presence, let's call it. And then all of a sudden, the ego intellect comes in like a wedding planner with a Bluetooth and a clipboard and says, okay, now what exactly is going on here? Okay, let me take note of this is enlightenment. Okay, look at me.
Yeah, the ego loves to own enlightenment. It loves to own the transcendence of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing how it works.
You get caught in these vicious circles, some more vicious than others. Such as the desire for desirelessness, or getting extremely attached to non-attachment, as Rick would say, things like that. We that's where we just trip on ourselves. But I think we said this as we were preparing to hit the record button. We talked about how animals and children, they just live in total presence and flow state without any notion of awareness of it or calculating it or being cognizant of it in any way. They just are there. they're not saying, look at me, I'm in flow state. Aren't you envious? Don't you wish you could do this? No, they're, and I think, Dale, that how can I say this? Self unawareness of small s self is a requirement to be unaware, unconsciously floating in flow state. Getting back to Taoism, the truly virtuous man is not aware of his virtue. And as soon as something is done for the sake of virtue, it is no longer virtuous.
Yeah.
So there are those, pitfalls, but the ego intellect seems to be the one meddling in all of that.
Yeah. But it's funny, like my favorite line from one of the many translations of the Tao Te Ching is to be careful handling the master craftsman's tool lest you cut your hand. And I spent a lot of time working with what I thought were the tools, and I realized that they weren't outside of me. They weren't on. People tell me all the time, "Oh my God, you've studied for decades and all these textbooks and all this," and I'm like, they're like, "What did you? If you could give me one piece of wisdom, what was it?" I was like, "It wasn't in any of the books." It was sitting in my lap the whole time.
And I'm going to tell you something, though. I'm going to tell you.
And then they're like, "Would you not have studied them?" I'm like, "No, that's great. Multifaceted, build the intellect, whatever. That's fine, but don't be its slave. To be able to." When I started going to these like Semitic language symposiums 30 years ago, and all these people arguing about what a word meant or what a phonetic marking, a diacritical mark was, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember putting my hand up at one in Tampa, and all these people with beards much longer than yours, a lot of them, turn around and they look at me, and I'm like, to me, this seems like something that's like a to-do or something. It's almost like an instruction in this verse. Has anybody tried putting it into practice rather than arguing about what it means, on the analytical level? And the fun thing was they all look at me and then they go back to arguing as if I never said a thing. And that's when I realized I was in the wrong room.
You had interrupted
all of the expertise, and you wonder if anybody knows a thing.
Well, so you had interrupted the Pharisees, and that's pretty sad, you see.
Yeah.
The Buddha called those kind of people, he compared them to someone who counts another farmer's cattle. In other words, they super analyze the theological scriptural text. They get caught in the print and they don't live the message, which is the whole point,
And you can feel instantaneously, and I know this may feel a little judgy, but it's like if someone comes up to me, I can feel instantaneously, and I do my best not to be over crystallized about it, but you can feel if someone's heart's open or not. And it's usually not the person that's, bless all of our hearts, including myself, that's leading some workshop somewhere. But it's usually the little, 79-year-old woman that's scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins, and she's not desiring to be somewhere else. All she wants to do is love you through service. And it happens, and I've been to places where that happens, and you drive by, that's where that little woman works. I'm going to go back. Oh, you want ice cream? I don't want ice cream. I want the love. I want to be back around that again. And that's the fun thing about it is, when it's alive and awake within you, you can't hold it in that sense, because you basically, like what I tell people, like people come up and like I was in Texas recently, and they're throwing the word pioneer and, oh, your work changed my life and all this. And it's funny because a friend came up and he was like, what's happening for you when people are saying that? I'm like, I'm doing what I can to listen, and I'm really being there with them in love, but I can't bite that hook for even a microsecond, because if I just get the tip of the hook in, that portal, that open, whatever it is that I'm in, it closes down.
When you say,
I can honor that, but
what do you mean when I know get sucked in, but get sucked in?
Well, meaning like if someone, we love to put people on pedestals as an example.
Right.
It's like it's an interesting razor's edge for me of really owning that. Oh, thank you. It's my deepest honor to be of service. I literally laid down my life for this.
Oh, I
It's
know what you
kind of the
mean.
phrases that come out of my mouth, and I really mean that.
Mm,
But yet there's also the part of me that just a lot of what they're saying slides off because
I
if
know.
I grab it, ooh, I've made a big difference in your life. As soon as I grab that, I go
Now,
back to the farce again. And
now
it's
I
never that I'm
understand.
fully out of it or fully anywhere. It's always this interesting dance
Yeah.
that's always present, right here. I think it was 2017 that someone from NASA, one of their senior scientists, said that we are simultaneously flitting or fluttering between an infinite multitude of dimensions in every present moment. And I remember going, ooh, that came from NASA. Wow. And then I went back years later trying to find that quote and I couldn't find it. But what an interesting thing. But we don't in our head think about the realization that our ego is digital. What digital means, analog, a record album is one pure sine wave. It's unbroken and there's no break in that connection. Digital is lots of little samples, almost like take one of your amazing photos, take an amazing photo and keep taking it and making it smaller and making it smaller and making it smaller. And what starts happening is more information is lost and you take little samples of this area, this area, this area, this area. Eventually it's not going to look like a Thai goddess anymore. It's going to just look like this kind of chaotic interference pattern. But that's what our ego does. It's not in a pure sine wave. It's taking all these little samples. And it's the difference between digital, which is lots of samples, versus the analog experience as a pure sine wave. And then our brain will literally make up whatever it needs to. Go look in the clouds, find me a boy laying down. Go look out in the forest and you'll see faces and you'll see all these different things that our brain is doing, but that's not what's real. What's real is what's looking. That's the analog experience,
We do
regardless
have
of
a
what it thinks it
tendency.
sees.
I'm sorry. We do have a tendency for, I'm just going to make up a term, pareidolia meaningfulness. We need to project that's because that means this. Well, be careful. First of all, just be present, open, not needing no agenda to know, and let it be born to you. A phrase that I like to say is let it be born to you, stand up and tell you its name. Let it come to you and wave and tell you its name.
You might be waiting a while on that name though.
Well, what I mean is let things show themselves to you as they unfold in divine time.
Well, my point in that is just, it probably isn't going to tell you anything about its name in general. It's just going to be what it is. So,
well,
yeah.
So I'm just putting it from the
no, I understand what you're saying
of other, but let yourself have time to discern what something is
rather than projecting
usually
something onto it. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need to project, because then we're stepping into that whole speculation prophecy stuff again, which I don't want to give any energy to. Dale, what advice or suggestions, or should I say guidance, would you offer to people who say, okay, navigating the cosmic shift, okay, I understand we don't want to put a lot of energy on needing to know what it is. Okay, I got that. I heard the points about, purification is very important, presence, willingness. I like that you used willingness, kind of fits in with Greg Braden, accentuating the importance of caring, that he was speaking more of manifesting, making something manifest. And he said care and willingness is also, what did you say it was? The grease of,
the cosmic grease. Willingness is the cosmic grease.
Yeah,
I could actually, there's plenty I could say about the word manifest as well too, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm picky with words too.
I mean, just manifest. Modern people don't know what it means, including 99% of the people talking about manifestation or the law of attraction. They don't know what the word manifest means.
Let's save that for our next.
Yeah, they don't even know what the word means. So
yeah, there's a lot of content there.
Yeah.
In respect to wrapping it up for today with, what would you leave those who have graciously stayed with us till this point.
There's one central key, definitely.
Yeah. What would you leave for them?
It's to be aware of the movement, the rise and fall of spirit, which in Aramaic, cross out the word spirit with a pencil and write breath above it. Be aware of the rise and fall of the breath, because you will instantaneously know if you bit a hook, because your breath will catch. It'll literally, someone pulls out in front of you on the road. You just found out that someone you love was tragically killed. My buddy, I was actually working at a CD place on 9/11/2001, and my bud David calls, and my wife answers the phone, and he's like, get Dale on the phone. I'm like, okay. He's like, dude, turn on the TV. And I'm like, what channel? He's like, any channel. And I remember turning the TV on and going, anyway, what's happening there is that's the resonance of something that's already in your system. It's not a cause outside, but some sort of condition that you're experiencing is just like, having a piano next to another piano. If you start hitting the A over here, or whatever note it is, that note's going to start resonating on that piano, so as the overtones and undertones. So what's interesting, especially when you go lower in the register, but what's interesting about that is when you realize that put it this way, in the Jesus teachings and in the original Aramaic, not usually in the way the theologians teach it, but he talks constantly about breath being directly connected to, put it this way, what we could call I don't have my little striker there, but this is what demon means in Aramaic. It means something that's not voicing, okay? How do we lock those things in place? We have an experience that's overwhelming. We're hitting entropy. We lock in. When we lock in, whatever that experience is, it's going to take a carbon copy and it's going to put it into your energy body, whether you're aware of that or not. This is actually what Yeshua was speaking. You hear the word Shadena Pek, cast out a demon. It means this. It means to take something that was restricted by the stopping of the flow of the breath, getting the breath moving and allowing it to speak, kind of like a whirlpool or an eddy. When everything goes off to the side and it starts spinning, if that's not flowing out like the Dead Sea, why is the Dead Sea dead? Because the Jordan flows down into it, and then it's too low to have an outlet. It's not flowing outward, so everything dies within it. You have that little eddy, the whirlpool on the side of the stream, that's going to start spinning. It's not back in the mainstream, and all of a sudden all these bugs and buzzards show up, but those aren't the cause. The cause was that it was taken out of the flow. And let me add one more piece here. If you take 2 1 square foot patches of grass 20 feet away from each other on the same lawn, and you monitor all the bugs, the ants, all the cleanup crew here and over there 20 feet away, you're going to get probably the same reading. But if you take the carcass of a dead rabbit and drop it on this one at 98.6 degrees for 24 hours, which is that restriction where we're locking that into the system. This is what needs to be forgiven that we're not forgiving. Come back in 24 hours. Obviously, it's going to look like there's demons everywhere. It's all the cleanup crew that is there feasting on what's dead, not open, not flowing in the system, is going to be much higher here than over there. But saying that a demon is the cause of what's going on inside of us is no more true than saying that the cleanup crew that showed up to consume the dead rabbit is the cause of what's happening there. We locked that in the system by stopping the breath. People tell me, how long did it take in your life to not bite the hook with your breath? I said, you want me to be honest? I said, it took me about 25 years, to the point where even if I go to a movie and violence is happening and there's death on the screen, whatever it may be, I'm going, and I'm aware of that inflow and outflow so that I can actually watch the divine play, but not get locked in it and lost in it and amplify what's already in my system or put something new in. And it's all, the key is be aware of your breath, be aware of the rise and fall. And again, be curious, allow yourself to be in that space, and don't think it's going to happen overnight. Just take care of this present moment. The next moment, if you take care of this one, the next moment will take care of itself. And I'll guarantee you, you're never going to meet the next moment. You're only ever going to meet now. So.
what I like to call the is, because even now is a time-stamped word. So I just call it the is. But I get you. And we touched on another topic that we'll do on another conversation if you're willing.
Yeah, it would have
to,
been a sideways wormhole. So
yeah, well, I noticed the word some demonology listed on your website too, and I will only say I'd be interested in having a conversation with you about that in the future, near future, and also I'll just note, as you said, the things that come and eat up the deadness and everything, and the demons, that whatever you mentioned, that demons are attracted to depression and disconnection and low frequency. They are drawn to that.
That pulling in energy, that retraction. Yeah.
And so the more connected and present and attuned and aligned and aware you are, number one, they're not interested in you. You're too much trouble. You're not.
Yeah, they couldn't care less.
Yeah. And second, you're kind of naturally immune or repellent to that. As the scriptures would imply, there's always got to be somebody kick the door open a little bit to let that in. There's always something that the person did, consciously or not, that lets that in. And unfortunately,
yeah, you're never totally. Yeah, absolutely. You're never totally, what's the word I'm looking for? A victim in that sense. So,
and Art Bell, Father Malachi Martin, he would attest very, very staunchly. Oh yes, they absolutely do know. Absolutely, they do know. He said anyone that's ever been possessed absolutely does.
Thank you for invoking Art. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I listen to Art Bell, I would say, most nights of the week as I fall asleep. I love Art
Awesome.
Bell. God bless him.
I've still got the Coast, the Coast to Coast app on my phone too, but yeah, cool.
Want to take a ride? Yep, I absolutely love Art Bell. So Dale Allen Hoffman, thank you so much for what I dare say and hope is the first of hopefully a few of your visits that would grace my little channel here. And I hope that our viewers will connect with you and find out more about you directly at daleallenhoffman.com. Link in description, of course, as always. And I bless you and I thank you for blessing us with all that you've shared and offered of yourself today. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Honored.
Hope to see you again soon, brother. Take care.